There are two enormous socio-political freight trains screaming at each other right now, headlong on the same track in North America, and nobody is seeing it. The resulting fallout from the wreckage of this, when they finally do collide, is going to reshape the direction of this hemisphere for centuries to come. And that is not an overstatement. Stick around. We're going to be detailing these two groups that nobody is seeing. But for those of you who have joined us over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel, thank you very, very much. I do not ever want to forget to say thank you, because you guys have stepped up in the last 6 months and made a huge difference in my life. These platforms have become nearly impossible to navigate. There's a lot of stuff in the weeds I'm not going to bore you with and waste your time, but believe me, you guys have made a difference in my life more than you know. It's only $1 US. There's only one level over there. $1 US per month. If you sign up in advance for an entire year, it's even less than that. It's like 90 cents per month. We can partner with Vimeo. We can show images that we can't show here. We can say things over there we can't say here. And we can cover the things that are important. And if it's not for you, if it's not truly for you, if you go over, give it a shot, first 90 days, you get your entire, what would be $3 back if it's not for you. No questions asked. So would love to have you guys over there. They'll be down in the comment section, of course, people attesting that the content is definitely different. Now, without any further delay, who are we talking about? I have made allegation for a long time that if North Americans, conservative North Americans, really knew how socially conservative Hispanic Western Hemisphere values were, they would definitely want more of them coming to North America. There are over 600 million people, almost double the population of the United States, living south of our border, Mexico, Central America, South America. Their social cultural values are incredibly conservative. They are God-fearing, they are pro-family, they are anti-abortion, they are just about everything the modern Democrat Party in North America stands against. But they get a very bad rap because of this whole issue with the border, and that is not an accident, truly. Now, Mayra Flores in Texas has just started off an earthquake that's going to finish up in November. Who's this person? She unseated a very solid blue district in Texas on the slogan, God, family, and country, in that order. I've literally said that in videos talking about Venezuela for years, that they have this exact value system in Latin America. El Dios, familia, país. In that order, always, no matter what. That is what their default is. Now, they've seen a lot of corruption and things they couldn't get on board with the North American, quote-unquote, Republican Party, because there are a lot of Republicans who are quite hypocritical. But they've always been conservatives. They have always been conservatives. Now, what am I talking about this past week? This young woman, out of nowhere, unseated, like I said, a guy, Sanchez, who had a rock-solid blue seat in Washington, in Texas. And she didn't win a close nail-biter of a race. Almost 8 points. 7.7 points for that House seat, which moves that needle one more tick closer to flipping the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. She shouldn't have won, period, given how popular the Democrat seat was with the Democrats. But that she won this big going away on the platform of God, family, country, This is going to be something that another group of people aren't going to be able to deal with. The fastest growing group of American evangelicals, a new generation of Latino Protestants, is poised to transform our religious and political landscape. This is from last year, July. And they talk about the story about how many, millions upon millions. By 2060, the Hispanic population in the United States is expected to grow from 60 million to over 110 million, and the vast majority of them will be God-fearing evangelical Protestants. This is the key. And there's a way to look at this that not a lot of people would see. I know a lot of people are looking at this image going, wait a minute, hold on. You were just talking about Christian moral values and God, family, and country, and Latinos, and now all of a sudden you're showing a picture of this really super popular video from YouTube, Despacito, from Luis Fonsi, Daddy Yankee. Now you would think, what does this have to do with anything? How could you possibly connect the two? All right. Even in the most secular circles of the Latino community, there is absolutely no ambiguity between who men are and who women are. Now, I would encourage you to go try to find the most secular examples of Latin music and Latin culture and Latin value, and see if you see any of this transgender nonsense. You don't. You absolutely don't, because even at the very core, even at the very lowest level, no, I'm not saying Luis Fonsi is a bad guy. I'm not saying the girl he's dancing with here, she was a Playboy model, she's a bad person. I'm just saying that the Latin culture does not allow for nonsense like what we are allowing here in North America with this transgender, boys going into girls' bathrooms, boys competing in girls' sports, all this. They have no use for it whatsoever. They have no use at all for the gay agenda. See, this doesn't fly with them. Absolutely not. This is a very North American thing. They scratch their heads at this and they're like, okay, what's the second group? Well, this is the second group. The gay agenda. This is the other freight train. You see, this was the giant mistake the governor made by getting on stage with Dave Rubin, simply because Dave Rubin jumped on the anti-Biden bandwagon. It is so easy to be anti-Biden now. Why? Gas prices are high. Inflation is high. There's all these problems in the world. Oh, it's so easy to be anti that guy. No allies who buy babies. No allies. Oh, but Florida Maquis, he says all these wonderful, good Republican talking points. He sure does. Because it's easy now. It's easy now. When it wasn't easy, do you want to see what it was like when it wasn't easy? Here's Dave Rubin from 10 August 2016, talking about how America just needs to get good with the idea of boys going into girls' bathrooms. I'll give you the link to this. Here's another video from him, 28 December of that same year, talking about why he was still a liberal and decrying conservative values and why they're just so terrible. You see, what he doesn't get, what this guy doesn't get is his own hypocrisy. He talks about how we should value individual rights. He calls himself somewhat of a libertarian. But what he doesn't get was that it was a social movement, an anti-libertarian movement, that even allows him to have the platform that he does. It is literally the gay agenda that has lifted him up and promoted him, and government intervention that stops discrimination against people of sexual orientation. That didn't happen in the 1950s. There was a huge social movement that said, no, you as an individual can't have this unpopular opinion. No, you as a business owner, you can't have this unpopular opinion. You can't discriminate based on this. See, he talks about individual rights now, once he's already benefited from the big social push that's allowed him to even exist in public. There was a time when, and it was only the 1990s, in the military, if you were homosexual, you'd be dishonorably discharged. Who remembers the series MASH? The character played by Jamie Farr, Klinger, walking around in a dress trying to get a Section 8 mental discharge. Why? Dressing like a woman. See, this is his hypocrisy. He's really, honestly, just too young to remember. He wouldn't have been old enough to remember when it was seen as a mental illness, when it was literally written into medical journals for hundreds of years that it was a mental dysphoria. It was psychological. And this is going to lead us to another place that we were just at a couple days ago, which is really crazy. This is a tweet online that was talking about this issue with the so-called Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. So Republicans want to decide what books kids can read, what math and history they can learn, which words they can use, which sports they can play, and how old they can be to marry, while telling them that, quote-unquote, libs are coming for their freedoms. Kids? Yes, absolutely. When we're talking about what books minors can read, yes, absolutely we do. Conservatives do. Why? Because they're children. Children can't make decisions for themselves. Proper, right, correct decisions. Why? They're children. So yes, which words they can use? Absolutely. When I was a kid, words I could and could not use in my home. I'm sure we all know what we're talking about. If my mother had decided I wasn't going to play football because she thought that was going to cause too much brain injury, she didn't, thank God. She wanted to, but she relented and allowed me to. That would have been the case. How old they can be to marry? Yes, absolutely. You see, this is the idea. Liberals, these people, are still operating as if they were children. That's why they identify with children. They want 16-year-olds to be able to vote. That's why they want to have them present at drag shows and all this other kind of crap. They've even made memes about how hard it is for them to be adults. I really didn't even understand this when it first came out. Somebody had to explain it. Like, what are they talking about? What does adulting mean? What's that term mean to these people? Somebody explain it to me. It's like being responsible for yourself, paying your bills, getting up, getting dressed, doing your job for that. I'm like, really? I remember doing that when I technically wasn't even an adult. I remember being 16 years old, 17 years old, and having to do things that, to what these people now is adulting, when I was still a minor. I'm like, what is so hard about getting up and just dealing with life? Now, full circle, back to the Patriot Nurse again, another clip where she literally has seen this about the liberals. And she literally says it in so many words. Let's listen real quick to what she has to say for about 1 minute.
When you are thinking about debating someone or trying to argue with someone about your Second Amendment rights in particular, you have to understand you are dealing with a child who is not capable of making a value judgment that would necessitate having an actual fruitful debate. Their mind cannot handle it. They do not process facts. They are overwhelmed with emotion. That is what they respond to. Now, in particular, this is a problem for us because people nowadays in this nation have voting powers, and their voting powers now are being more and more steered based on the expediencies of emotional catharsis. So for them, a vote is an emotional release. It's not a mental exercise and a value judgment of, is this right? Is this congruent? Is this something that is going to be compatible with my beliefs in the future, as evidenced by historical fact, making those choices reasonable for our times?
Bingo. This is exactly it. This is exactly it. Dealing with children. This is why children, pardon me, this is why children can't understand the Bible. This is why you teach children values as they grow. You just don't hand them a Bible, say read it, and hope they get saved. Why? Well, how would a child explain the slaughter of the Canaanites? There's some adults I know that can't explain this. Why? Because they're ruled by their emotions. They would say no loving God could have ever ordered the Israelites to do what they did with the Canaanites. If you're not familiar with the story, go to Deuteronomy and read about it. See, this is what brings us all the way back to here. You have to grow up quick. You have to grow up quick in Latin America and South America. There's no room for immaturity or petulance or selfishness. Why? They're not wealthy like North Americans are. That's a luxury we have imbued into our children, which have done them a great disservice by not making them suffer a little bit. See, down here, I don't care where you're at, whether it's Chile, Brazil, Venezuela, Guatemala, Panama, Colombia, their children down there grow up a lot faster. And that's why a lot of them embrace the values of the Bible at a much younger age. This is going to be the two freight trains. The North American gay agenda and the evangelical Protestant Christian values of Latin America. They are now coming to a head. And one is going to win out over the other because they're incompatible. I'm not talking about republicanism. See, even a sodomite like Dave Rubin can be a Republican, but he could never be part of conservative Christian Latin culture. Never. Which is why I use this image. Like even if he didn't want to be Christian, he couldn't even be part of their secular culture. Because their secular culture down there doesn't allow for any confusion or ambiguity about, you try that bullshit down there. You go down there as a trans, you go try, as a guy, you try to walk into a woman's restroom in Latin America. You are going to have a can of whoop ass opened up on you like nobody's business. I mean, if there's some guy's little girl in there, you're going to the hospital. If some mother's in there with her kids, it's gonna be on like Donkey Kong. I mean, it's gonna be bad. You see, they just don't have any patience with that nonsense. And I had to freeze frame the video at some point here to just illustrate the point. So, I mean, this is Louis Fonsi, and this is Playboy Playmate of the Year. I don't remember her name from that year back in 2017, but this is the key. The Latinos have no patience for this whatsoever. Whatever other issue may come up, may arise, God, family, country. God, family, country. That's why this move by the governor of Florida was so devastatingly wrong. The Dave Rubins of the world, the South Americans see right through him. And like I said, if you want to see right through him, here's his videos. I'll give you the links to them. And like I said, this was August and December of 2016, when he still had his Rubin report and when he was getting promoted by the platform and all of the things that he doesn't realize. Clearly, you can tell this guy doesn't realize that the only reason anybody knows who he is because of a giant social movement that pushed and promoted him. That without that social movement, he'd be a nobody. And it is super, super easy right now to jump on the whole, I don't like Joe Biden either bandwagon. When gas prices are high, when inflation is high, when there's all sorts of upheaval in the world, all sorts of problems, that's easy. It is so easy. Where was he when it was hard to be a conservative? You see, this is the key. Said this before, say it again. Their children, they can't handle pain. The leftist liberal cannot handle pain, cannot handle the idea of not being with the in crowd. They stick their finger in the wind and they just figure out what direction it's going, and that's what they do. That's how you can tell these, and that's what the governor has done. He got so much pressure from the gay community because of the whole "don't say gay" thing. He felt like he had to go explain himself over and over and over again. He had to go get on stage with Dave Rubin and make ridiculous, worn out jokes about Brandon and all this kind of stuff. Not a fan of Joe Biden myself. The man's incompetent and he's old and he needs to be retired. But that shouldn't drive value judgments, pardon me, on this. That's why I'm done with the governor, because he's clearly out. He could have chosen the difficult road. The governor could have chosen the difficult road, would have said, he could have refused Dave Rubin, refused his offer. He didn't even have to address it. You see, that's the thing. He could have just refused. Or he could have gotten on stage and said, you know what, Mr. Rubin? Conservative Christian values don't allow for you to be part of our movement. But the governor outed himself as not a conservative Christian. He's a Republican only. So those of you out there within the sound of my voice who are conservative Christians, who are supporting the governor, you need to look long and hard at his decision making now. Because when it comes down to your values or the values that keep him in power, even if they go directly against what the Bible says, he will choose whatever keeps him in power, regardless of what the Bible says. That's the question you need to ask yourself. If you're a conservative Christian in Florida, this man has shown that he will choose power of his own over Almighty God. I'll leave it there. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.